Jungkook slowly opened the door of your room before stepping inside. You were lying on the bed, your back facing him as you pretend to sleep. You had been avoiding him since last night, that argument, and ever since his harsh words cut through you, leaving you unsure if things would ever feel right again. The room was silent, filled with tension as he stood there watching you. You kept your eyes closed tightly, not ready to face him yet. It hurt more than you expected. You knew deep down it was your fault, that his anger had a reason. When you entered his study earlier, you had not meant any harm. You wanted to surprise him by bringing a meal you had prepared, hoping to break through the cold distance he kept between you two. He was always so absorbed in his work, and you missed spending time with him, missed the warmth he rarely showed. But instead of waiting, instead of knocking, you stepped in without permission, interrupting his focus. You had noticed papers scattered on his desk, important confidential documents, and an unfinished lecture draft. Curiosity got the best of you, and without thinking, you picked up one of the papers to look at what he was working on. The equations and notes fascinated you, and you got lost in reading, not realizing he had returned. When he saw you standing there, in his private space, holding his unfinished work, his cold, disappointed glare said everything. "I told you not to come in here without permission," he scolded you. His voice was calm but harsh. "You have no right to touch my work. This is not something for you to mess with." Looking down at the floor, you mumbled an apology. Knowing he was right, he reminded you that his work was confidential and that you should respect his boundaries, his privacy, but his words, though fair, still left a sting that did not go away. He slowly came near, standing a few inches away from your bed. He knew you were not sleeping. "Are you really going to ignore me the whole time now?" he asked, knowing well you are listening. His usual cold voice was soft now. You didn't say anything. You didn't want to talk because you were angry. You admit that you shouldn't have checked those papers. You crossed your boundaries, but the way he shouted at you, told you to leave the room, it was too harsh, considering the fact that he's not a professor at home. "Why? I know you're not sleeping," he asked again, but you didn't want to talk, not after the way he had looked at you, so cold and distant, as if you had no place in his life beyond the boundaries he had drawn around himself. "I don't want to talk right now," he said, pulling the blanket over your head. You were not only sad but also hurt by his harsh words. Jungkook sighed. He knew he acted way too much and he was guilty for that. He took a few steps closer to your bed but didn't touch you. He knew you won't like it. "I didn't mean to be that harsh, but you need to understand my work is important and I need you to respect that." You let out a short, bitter laugh, finally sitting up and facing him. "Respect? I made a mistake, yes, but you didn't have to treat me like some stranger who had no right to be there. You yelled at me like I was nothing. I'm your wife, Jungkook, not just some random person barging into your office." He stayed quiet, looking at you with a frown, as if your anger surprised him, but you didn't stop. The hurt had built up too much for you to hold back now. "Do you know how it felt? You told me to get out like I didn't matter, like our relationship is just some arrangement with rules I'm supposed to follow. You could have just told me to leave, Jungkook. You didn't have to make me feel so small." He ran a hand through his hair, looking away as if searching for words. I didn't think of it that way. I was frustrated and I reacted." You shook your head, not letting him off that easily. "Being frustrated doesn't give you the right to treat me like that. Do you think I don't understand that your work is important? I do, but maybe what I needed was for you to show me that I'm important too." He opened his mouth as if to speak but then stopped. His expression softened just slightly. For a moment, he looked at you as if he finally understood what his words had done, but you were not ready to forgive him yet. The wound was too fresh. "Why, I'm sorry, but please stop avoiding me like this. At least eat your dinner." You again lay down on the bed, covering yourself. "I need some space, Jungkook. Please leave." He opened his mouth to say something but didn't because he knew you were angry and you won't listen to him. And And with one last glance at you, he turned and left, closing the door behind him. The silence that followed was heavy, but it felt better than letting him think that his words didn't matter. After Jungkook left the room, you sat down staring at the closed door. The silence filled every corner and you felt exhausted, a mix of anger and sadness building inside you. Jungkook rarely treated you this way, but when he did, his coldness hurt like a slap. It reminded you that even though he cared, there were still walls between you that he refused to let down. Jungkook walked in the living room before sitting on the couch. He stared at the floor while his dinner sat untouched on the table, but he wasn't hungry. The house was silent and his mind kept replaying what had happened. Earlier, he had found you looking through some exam papers on his desk. Those were private and he hadn't told anyone about them yet. Seeing you flipping through them made him lose his temper. He yelled at you, saying you shouldn't have entered his study or touched his things without permission. But now sitting here, he was starting to realize he was wrong. You were just curious, you didn't mean any harm. But instead of explaining that calmly, he had scolded you like a stranger, not like his wife. He remembered the hurt look on your face when he had told you to leave, like he was only your professor and not your husband. Jungkook ran a hand through his hair, feeling regret settled in. He knew he had a habit of being cold and distant sometimes, especially when he felt his personal space was crossed, but now he could see how much that was hurting you. He didn't want this distance between you, and he realized he had gone too far saying things he couldn't take back. The next day at the university, you walked through the crowded halls, trying to keep your head down. You wanted to avoid Jungkook and the uncomfortable tension between you. He had classes in the same building and you hoped to pass by without seeing him. Even in the morning, you left the house alone. This time, you have decided not to let this slide easily. As you turned a corner, you nearly bumped into him. Your eyes met, but you quickly looked away. Why can we talk after the lecture? I'm busy. Saying that, you walked away, leaving him staring at your disappearing figure. He sighed, not understanding what to do to make you talk to him. During the lecture, you sat at the back of the room, pretending to focus on your notes. Jungkook was standing at the front, teaching, but you could feel his eyes on you. He glanced over several times, but you made sure not to meet his gaze. Instead, you wrote down every word he said, even if your mind was elsewhere. As the lecture continued, you felt a knot tighten in your stomach. You knew he wanted to reach out to fix things, but you weren't ready to forgive him just yet. When he assigned a group activity, you deliberately chose to work with classmates far from him, laughing and chatting to keep the distance. Jungkook walked over to your group, finding a chance to check on you, to see if your anger melted or not because you looked just fine with your friends. How is the assignment coming along? Is anyone facing any difficulties? He asked, his eyes on you, hoping you would answer or at least say something, but you remained silent. Instead, your friend Maya answered. Maya looked up and smiled. We are doing well, thank you. Wayne has been really helpful. You kept your head down, focusing on your notes and avoiding eye contact. Jungkook felt a twinge of disappointment at your silence. That's good to hear. If anyone had questions or needs assistance, please don't hesitate to ask. We're all good for now, but we'll let you know if we run into any issue. Thank you, Ravi. Jungkook replied, but his gaze remained on you. Wayne, do you have everything you need for the assignment? I want to make sure you are not struggling. You still didn't look at him. I'm fine, you said casually. Are you certain? I know the material can be challenging. He added, expecting you to even look at him, but you didn't. I said I'm fine. Jungkook's expression softened a bit. Alright, just making sure. Remember, I'm here to help if anyone needs anything. He waited. Everyone nodded except you. Jungkook sighed and walked towards the other students, but his mind was thinking about something else. He needed to find a way to break through your walls. Maya turned towards you once Jungkook walked away. Yeah, did something happen between you and Professor John? Why are you so silent from the morning? You looked at her. Let's focus on the task at hand, you said, a little annoyed while she sighed and shook her head, knowing you don't even talk properly when you're angry. Jungkook was waiting for you. It was late, but you didn't come home. He already knew you went somewhere with your friends and didn't even bother to tell him. The door unlocked, signing that you came back. When you came in the living room, you saw Jungkook sitting. He got up. He was serious, yet his eyes were soft. Your eyes met for a second and you were about to go in your room, ignoring him, but he grabbed your hand, holding you back. Are we really going to keep this up? He asked. Finally, his voice was holding a trace of frustration, but also something softer, something almost vulnerable. You tried to free your hand, but he wasn't planning to let you go. He walked behind you. I know I hurt you. I was wrong. And I realize now that I went too far, but you won't even look at me. You slowly turned to him. You could see the apology and guilt in his eyes. And it was true. It's been 3 days and the silence between you was eating him inside. Shouldn't you be happy that I'm doing what you wanted? This way you get your peace. I'm not crossing my boundaries, and no one is here to give you a hard time either. You emphasized the word boundaries. He lowered his eyes for a second, guilt washing over him again. I'm sorry, Ryan. For what exactly? For everything. He said, meeting your gaze. You knew he realized his mistake. Now you know how it feels. How it feels when the person you care about treats you like you're not really there, like you're a stranger. He looked down, his jaw tightened. I don't want you to feel that way. You nodded, the smallest trace of hurt flashing across your face. But that's exactly how I felt, Jungkook. And if it's that easy for you to push me away, maybe I don't mean as much to you as I thought. His eyes widened slightly as though your words had struck something deep inside him. He leaned forward, his expression shifted to one of raw sincerity, the coldness in his eyes replaced by a sudden urgency. Don't say that. You mean everything to me. I just don't know how to show it sometimes. You stayed silent, letting his words hang in the air. For the first time, he seemed to realize that love wasn't just about saying the right things, but also about making you feel valued and secure, no matter how frustrated or stressed he was. It wasn't my intention to make you feel that way. I just reacted without thinking, he murmured in his soft tone. Reacted? You didn't just react, Jungkook. You shut me out. You acted as if I had done something unforgivable. All because I was curious about some papers. I have respected your boundaries from day one. But there are moments like this one where I wonder if that respect goes both ways. He swallowed, clearly affected by her words. I know it doesn't excuse anything, but it's not easy for me. I don't always know how to let my guard down. Sometimes it just comes out wrong. Then work on it. You can't keep using that as an excuse. Love isn't just about showing up when it's convenient or when things are easy. It's about making sure I feel like I'm a part of your life, even when it's uncomfortable. I can't be with someone who treats me like I'm disposable whenever he feels too guarded. Jungkook looked down, his fingers brushed his temples as he processed your words. When he looked back up, his gaze was softer, his usual coldness replaced by a vulnerability that you rarely saw. You are right, I have been selfish and careless, but believe me, Ryan, I realized my mistake immediately. Please give me a chance. There was silence for some time. I will, but to let you know that I won't tolerate this behavior, Jungkook. I love you, respect in every way, whether it's professor or my husband. I know I can be difficult sometimes and annoys you, but that's because I love doing that. I love to make you smile, but if you love me, then show me I'm worth that effort. Because if I feel like I'm being disrespected or you're just loving me when you find it convenient, I'm not going to stay. He looked down slowly, reaching out to hold your hands in his. Even though he never really made you feel small intentionally, he was always respectful and caring. He didn't realize his cold nature was making you feel so lonely. That's because you never bring that up. Ryan, I'm sorry, I will do better. I will become better for you. I know what I did can't be justified. I was stressed, but that didn't give me any right to say those words. But please don't avoid me like this. It's been days and that's enough, please. You let out a slow breath, letting the tension ease slightly, though the weight of his words settled between you both. I hope you mean that, Jungkook, because I won't just accept words. I need actions. I need you to let me in, to trust that I'm here because I love you. He pulled you into a quiet embrace, resting his chin on your shoulder, as if grounding himself in the moment. I do love you, and I'm sorry it took me this long to realize how much I have taken you for granted. The silence settled around you both, but this time it was warm and filled with unspoken promises. For the first time, you felt like he was truly listening, truly understanding what you needed. After you both stayed like that, clearing all your fears and what was inside your minds, everything feels light, as if a heavy weight lifted off your shoulder. You slowly broke the hug before looking at him. Okay, now let's eat something. I haven't ate properly in these past few days, he said with a pout while he chuckled softly and nodded. You want me to cook? You pouted and shook your head after thinking for some time. Can we have ordered food? I'm craving some Italian and also Chinese. He chuckled softly. Okay, go and freshen up. I'll order. You know my favorites, right? He said, winking at him before walking towards your shared bedroom. Jungkook sat on the couch, watching you go into the bedroom with a small smile. He took a deep breath, feeling grateful and relieved. Thinking about everything that happened, he realized how lucky he was that you still cared and wanted to make things work. It felt surreal, as if he had been given a second chance, one he was determined not to waste. He realized now just how much his coldness had hurt you, and how lucky he was that you were willing to give him a second chance. He picked up his phone to order dinner, smiling as he remembered you asking for Italian and Chinese food. You always had a way of making things feel special, even with little choices like what to eat. As he placed the order, he thought, I won't let my own mistakes push her away again. In his life, he had built walls to protect himself, walls that he thought were strong and necessary. But with you, those walls didn't make sense. You saw through them, reaching out to him with a warmth that was completely foreign but also exactly what he needed. When he finished ordering, he sat back, waiting for you to come back. The heaviness between you was gone, and he felt happy and relaxed. When you returned, looking fresh and smiling, he knew he wanted to make you feel this happy every single day. You were the one who made him feel alive, and he was ready to show you just how much you meant to him, no matter what.